So let's get the show on the road here. We've got 31 people. We have Howard Frank, who is going to talk to us tonight about his program, Post-Processing from Camera Raw to Plugins. And this will be, this may be the last Zoom program that we're going to be doing. I'm not sure about whether we're going to be live streaming anything, but we're going back to live meetings. And so our next garden programs will be live at the garden. We'll talk about whether we want to live stream or not. That's a whole other conversation. But we have this, and then our competition schedule begins October 20th. That will still all be online using the 411 Vision site. And then our programs, our first, we're going to have photo walks. First one is going to be the October 15th at the garden, the golden hour photo walk at the garden, meeting the usual place.
September, October?
October, sorry. Did I say September? Yeah, October 15th.
Well, then the October competition is going to be after the first CACA competition.
Is October 20th. Yes, that's right.
So but the CACA competition will be over, so we're going to miss one. Yes.
I think that was an inevitable programming glitch. But that's what we've set it up as, and we'll just have to submit those the next meeting. But we do have 7 competitions this year instead of 6. But anyway, so that's October 15th, 5:30 at the Heritage Garden at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And our club meeting, like I said, is going to be October 20th for all you club members. Anyway, so without any further ado, I was great to see that Howard would give his program that he's given to this other group that I go to. When I missed it there, so I wanted to see it. So it worked out for everybody. So here he is, Howard Frank.
Hi, welcome everybody. If everybody could turn on their video for just a minute, I wanted to take a couple brief surveys. And first question I have is how many folks use Lightroom? If you could just raise hands. Photoshop only, and how about Elements? Any Elements users? Any other software? Is
big collection.
And anybody shooting JPEG, or is everybody shooting RAW? Do you have any JPEG shooters here? Okay, I'm going to try and convince you by the end of the night that maybe you want to look at shooting RAW. Okay, thanks. All right. Tonight we're going to talk about Camera Raw, which is basically the same thing in Lightroom and Photoshop and Elements. I think the interface is a little more elegant in Lightroom, which is one of the reasons why I like to use it. And I also use the what they call the Digital Asset Manager. Let's see, I have to do this to share my screen here. Share screen 2. Hopefully everybody can see Lightroom. If not, yes. Let us know. All right. What I'm going to do is I'd like to keep this somewhat interactive. So if you have questions or concerns or comments you'd like to make as we go, one of the features of Zoom is that if you go and you click on what is it?
The chat window?
No.
Raise hand.
Raise hand. It puts a hand up and we can see you, and Carlos is going to kind of keep track of it, and we'll call on you as quick as we can. So anyhow, basically just a couple of start out things. I do not have all of the modules available to Lightroom showing on top because there's a couple of them I don't use, so I just don't want to bother to see them. And the way to add or subtract or change those is you just right click on a blank spot here, and you'll see that I've got library develop, slideshow and print showing, and map and book I've got turned off. So you can basically just turn on or off to customize this to whatever way you'd like to use it. We're going to spend most of our time in the develop module. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about is that you have an option within the develop module to open all of these different windows at the same time, and you'll scroll forever. There's also a choice called solo mode. And if you right click under the panel here somewhere, kind of lost it here, but if you right click, there's an option to click solo mode. And what that will do is, as you change modules from one to the other, it closes the others so that you only have one module open at a time rather than all of them at the same time. One of the things that hopefully most of you are aware of is there's a module in here called calibration, and we're currently using version 5. Some of us have been using this for many years, and if you have and you want to go back and edit an old image, you might find that all of the new features and functions are not showing. And the reason why is because it's got an earlier version of the function keys. So if you go and you change this to version 5, it will show you all of the current editing effects, and it will tend to change the images somewhat. One of the things that I like to do, and I learned this from another program that I was watching, is that there's something over here on the left side called presets. And one of the things you can do within presets is that you can do custom presets. And what I do with custom presets is I have a preset here called input. And basically, when I start, I go through and I make a lot of changes in the basic panel, kind of as a starting point. So if I click on the input preset, it's not holding. For some reason, it's not holding tonight, but I mean, you can kind of see what it's doing as I click on it. So I have 3 different presets here. So what that does is you'll see that it's moved some of the sliders so that I don't have to go and do the same thing again and again. My picture that I started with behind me was from the Air and Water Show. And I was shooting with my Nikon Z9 that shoots up to 20 frames a second. And when you're shooting 20 frames a second and you want to see how, you've got a lot of them that have the same settings, it can be a lot quicker to use a preset as a starting point rather than have to start all over again. One of the other issues or features or whatever is I usually import from my camera. I have a card reader, and I will put my card in the reader and bring everything into Lightroom. If you've got 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 images, that can take quite a long time. So there's another program that I use if I'm going through a lot of images, especially if there's a lot which are similar, called Photo Mechanic. And what Photo Mechanic allows you to do is to bring in all of the images very quickly and you can go through and it's got, you can do selections, you can do colors, you can do numbers. So you can just go through and very quickly choose what you'd like and just import what you'd like into what you want to work on, or at least save into Lightroom, so that you don't have to do all of them and then come back and take forever editing them.
Hey, Howard,
Yes.
Photo Mechanic is not cheap, right?
No, it's not.
I have another suggestion for people who have thousands of images that they want to raw images they want to go through. I use Fast Raw Viewer, which is like 29 bucks or something. It's much less expensive, and you can go through the images very quickly. And then the images remaining in that folder, then you import those or do whatever you want to do with them.
Is that PC and Mac or just Mac?
It's PC. There's PC and Mac versions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fast Raw Viewer.
Okay.
It just goes click, and you can configure it so that it works exactly like Lightroom works, X and P, or just what I do, X and next cursor, right cursor, gets you to the next image, and you right cursor, that's a keeper, UX, that's a delete. Anyway, so that's
Okay.
Fast Raw Viewer.
All right, very good. One of the things that was recommended to me was that when you do your edits, you kind of start from top to bottom. And one of the options you have within Lightroom is to, oh, here's solo mode, by the way. I just clicked on a closed window, I right clicked, and you'll see show all, solo mode, expand all, or collapse all. So one of the other things that you can do within Lightroom is that you can reorder what comes first and next, so that if your workflow is to, let's say you do basic editing, and what I've done is I've moved effects up to be the second one rather than down here at the bottom, because I don't always use these others, but I do use effects, which is going to allow us to do some vignetting. You can do it very, very quickly. So generally, my workflow is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out, and the very first thing I'm going to do is crop, because there's no sense in spending a lot of time editing something that you're going to get rid of anyway. And especially if you're cropping heavier, you can see what it's going to, you see a better view of what it's going to look like, so that if you have to do some additional changes, you can. I do a lot of printing, and I do printing 13 by 19 or 16 by 20 very often, or sometimes 11 by 14 or so forth. So one of the things you can do in your crop is that it says original, which is cropping to the original aspect ratio. As an option, you can set additional, it has several different presets. So like 4 by 10, 8 by 10, I'm sorry, 4 by 5, 8 by 10, which is also 16 by 20 is the same aspect ratio. So I can use that there. Now I have some paper which is 17 by 25, because I have a printer that will print 17-inch wide. So what I'll do with that is I'll click on here and say enter custom, and it pops up a box giving you a custom aspect ratio. So you can put in any aspect ratio that you want, or any physical measurements that you want, and then save it, so that in the future it will give you that aspect ratio for cropping, if you wish. The other thing that you can do, you'll notice that this has a lock, so that when I'm doing my adjustments, it's keeping the same aspect ratio as the original. If I want to have a different aspect ratio than any of these, I can just click once and it unlocks the aspect ratio, so that I can do a custom ratio and make it whatever I'd like to have it be. So for this one, I think for now we'll do a custom ratio, and probably don't want to put them in the center, so we'll move them over just a little bit. And then I'm going to go through and do some of my basic editing. So again, I've done my input editing first, and then let's say I want to put a little more exposure on him. I want to be careful because the sun is shining on his back, so I don't want too much in the white. So I'm going to pull down my whites a little bit so that I can maybe adjust my whole exposure a little bit, make it a little brighter, and still keep him good. Now up top is a histogram, which is showing us from light to dark what I've got in here. One of the little tricks you can do is any of these sliders, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks and so forth, is if you press the Alt key, and while the Alt key is pressed, if you slide your slider up or down, I can keep on moving highlights up and notice that I'm starting to get white, which is going to be blowout or overexposed, so that I can adjust each one to taste, if you will. And there's no shadows here, so it looks like this one isn't going to affect anything here. Whites, again, the same way, no whites. And these are the blown out areas that you'll see coming in as I move my slider up. Blacks the same way. I'm just starting right here to get some blacks, and it happens to be in the legs there, and I don't particularly care about it. By the way, what I'm doing is just left clicking my mouse, and it's automatically zooming in for me so that I can kind of see what's going on and get a full-size view. This is a 100% view. I have a fit view, and I also have some bigger views if there's a reason to go to multiples of 300% or more or less. Now on this one, on 100%, you'll notice that I'm getting a little grainy. So I can use the Photoshop detail slider, and I can work on noise reduction there. Or one of my very favorite plugins, one of my two favorites, is a program called Topaz Denoise AI. So the way I'm getting there is I'm right-clicking again on my screen. I'm going to edit in, and it shows me the list of all of my presets. So I'm going to go edit Topaz Denoise, and I'm going to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. It's going to open up denoise and pull it in. Can everybody see the denoise now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Now you'll notice that what it did was it was in the middle, but the details that I want to see are up here, and so I want the bird and I want the water, and there's multiple models of standard, clear, low light, and severe noise. And we have options within here to, first of all, zoom our views in or out, and change to single view, split screen view, side-by-side view, or composite. And there's multiple models here. So there's standard, clear, low light, severe noise, raw. So I can, I like to use the comparison because then I can go and look at each one and see what I like the best. Usually by default, pick standard. But if I like one of the others better, I can click on it. And then when I say apply, it's going to apply it. Now, the other thing I can do here is before I apply it is I can, if I think that there's still too much noise, I can manually remove additional noise or put a little noise back if I want. I can work on sharpness and work on detail and noise reduction. So for now, we're going to accept this one and say apply. And what it's going to do is make the changes and then just drop it back into Lightroom or Photoshop. Yeah.
So I really love Topaz Denoise and all that. I don't use Lightroom though. How did you call it from here?
Just right click, go to edit in.
So if I'm looking at raw and I right click and you're saying edit?
Edit in. And then these are all the presets, all the third-party programs that I happen to have on my computer.
Okay, so that's not available in just regular Camera Raw. I don't see that.
I believe it is.
Well, I mean, I normally just wait till I put it into Photoshop. I have one open now. I just.
Well, I mean, but if you're in,
Submit it.
if you're in Camera Raw in Photoshop, it should
Yeah.
act exactly the same way.
You did it in Photoshop instead?
Yeah, if you're in Camera Raw in Photoshop, and we can check it in a little while, because I do have Photoshop here also. So,
And
all right.
the other
Go
thing I
ahead.
wanted to say was, of those 4 comparisons in Topaz, the settings are kind of sticky. So I know that for me, low light actually works well. And the 2 on the right never look good, probably because I adjusted them too far and they need to be reset. So just so you know, you can sort of make them what you want them to be.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, and remember to lower your hand, so we see it again next time. All right, thank you. All right, so that's one thing. You'll notice that we're a little blown out here. What I might do is pull up some texture and a little clarity. And you have to be careful that you don't do too much. Sometimes I find that the haze helps, sometimes it doesn't. And again, because the whites are a little blown out, you know, we can pull them down. Now, my goal tonight, just so that you know, is not to make a perfect image, but just to show you how everything works and, you know, how to use them and when to use them. So the next thing I might do with this guy is he's really sharp right now, but let's see, let's take another patch here. This guy here, he's kind of fun. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take him and I'm going to crop him the way I'd like. And as I crop, if I want to go vertical, I can just kind of keep on pushing and it will go vertical. And let's see, I want to make this one, let's say I want to make this 11 by 14. And we'll come in here. And again, we're going to go back to our input setting. And that's going to give us some adjustments. It's opening up the shadows a little bit. And this one, I can open up the highlights. You'll notice that I'm not against the edge here anywhere, so I do have some room here to go white and maybe a little more exposure. And I love this with the eyes are just crazy on this thing. This was at the beach and it was just coming out of the water. And let's say I want to sharpen him. So what I'm going to do again is right click and say edit in. And this time I'm going to use Sharpen AI, which is my, I don't know, first or second favorite plugin. Probably use that almost more than I do the denoise. And again, it's got the same idea where it's going to open up the program. And it has 4 different, depending on how you set it, it's got up to 4 different previews. And again, I'm going to move the mouse to what's important to me. So it's this. So what it's doing is you'll notice that it's moving the bars here, and one by one, these are turning blue as it's done. Now, there's something else when you're working with Sharpen is that there are things that I do not want to sharpen. So for example, there's no reason to sharpen the sand. So the next thing I am going to do is come down here, use my slider a little bit, and where it says select, if I turn that off, what it's going to do is it's going to try and automatically select my subject for me. And it's going to take a little bit, and I notice that because I'm on Zoom, it seems to run a little slower than it does normally. But what it's going to do is it's going to make an attempt to select my subject, do its best that it can. And because I want to look at this, I want to see the whole dog here. I'm going to change my sizing to 25%, probably a little small. We'll go to 50%. Be enough to. And you notice that down here, it's got a selection. I can come over here and I can refine the selection. And what it's going to do is it's going to draw the mask. There it is. And you'll notice that this time it did a really nice job, but I do have the ability to add or subtract. I do have the ability to adjust the size and the opacity and the sample area. And you'll notice that the way it's set right now is that anything in the solid white is going to affect it. Anything in the outer ranges will not affect it. In this case, it did a really nice job, so I don't really have to do anything else. So I'm just going to say update. And what it's going to do is it's going to redo these sharpen updates, and it's going to do it based on just sharpening the dog in this case, and not the sand or the fence or anything else that's in there. Again, I can choose which one I like the best. I might go a little larger to see which one I like the best. Remember that each time you resize it, it's going to resample it. And you'll notice that there's several different types of settings that I can use. And I can choose my own. And even though it's a sharpen program, you'll notice that it does have some blur and noise selections. Denoise has some sharpening. Sharpen has some denoise. So I'm kind of looking at the eyes and the fur here, and I kind of like, you'll notice that it chose this time too soft, very blurry. And I think that's a little bit overcooked. So I'm going to go back and choose standard for this particular subregion, say apply.
Howard, I have a question back about Topaz denoise.
Yeah.
There was that slider that said increase sharpness, right? And below that, there was another slider that said increase detail, increase subject detail, something like that.
Yeah.
What is the difference between increasing the? I've never got that straight. Between increasing.
Well, I think the only way I know of to do that is to try it. Is to move the sliders extreme one way and extreme the other way. And one of the things that I really like about Camera Raw is that you can't destroy the image. You can't hurt it. You can always go back to the original image. And sometimes if I want to try multiple things, what I'll do is I'll come in here to photo and I will do a create a virtual copy, which can also be done by Controller Command Plus. And I will make some changes to my virtual copy, and I can try 2 or 3 different settings and see out of them which one I like the best. Or maybe I like them both, so I'm going to keep multiple. And by the way, there's about 3 or 4 things to do almost anything in Lightroom and Photoshop, and they're all right, and none of them are wrong. It's just whatever you get used to and whatever's quickest and easiest for you. Now, one of the things that's not necessary on this animal, but sometimes it's kind of handy, is this flip horizontal or flip vertical. So in this case, because it's a vertical, if I flip vertical, I'm sorry. So I'm going to undo my flip here. So I'm going to do a photo and I'm going to flip horizontal. Now I've got them coming in from the other side. So if I want to go from left to right or right to left, that's what that's going to allow me to do. Okay. So you'll notice that once I went out to the other program, although the sliders have all taken effect, these have all zeroed out again, which is handy to know because sometimes, bringing these all the way to one edge or another still doesn't give you enough. So if you need more, you can go out and come back in, and then you can come back and kind of double up on what you're doing. So again, if I wanted to make a couple of additional changes, Now, one of the other things that I haven't talked about yet, but one of the differences between camera raw and JPEG, whenever you do a JPEG capture, you're throwing away probably, depending on how, how much detail is in your photo, probably anywhere between 40 and 70% of the detail. And you'll notice, because I took this out to another program and came back, if I go to my color profiles, all I've got is color and monochrome. I have no other settings available. Now, if I go back to my original image here, you'll notice that when I come to profiles, I have any number of profiles. These are the Adobe profiles. And then if I click on these little 4 squares, I have any number of additional profiles. Now, these are starting points. And remember, if you're shooting in JPEG, you're allowing the camera to make these decisions for you. And you might or might not remember to set them the way you want them. If at night in fireworks, you're shooting fireworks, you're going to set that profile and so forth. But one of the nice things about RAW is that because you have not thrown away any pixels, I can go through here and I can make an awful lot of different changes or look at different starting settings, decide which one I like for the particular image that I'm working on. And there are, first of all, this is my camera matching. So this is, if I were using JPEG on the particular camera that this was taken with, which happens to be the Z9, here's my landscape, my neutral, my portrait. So any of those settings that I had, I can still go to. I've not lost anything because I've still got all of the pixels and all of the detail to work from. And then they've got all kinds of crazy creative things in here also. Okay. So these are all things that are available to Camera Raw that are not available when you go to, so there's another 10 that they call modern. Here's another 10 that they call vintage. So I have literally hundreds of different filters that I can use. And the way I got to them is just by either using these profiles, which are the basic Adobe profiles, or clicking on these 4 little squares, which give me all of the others. When I'm done, I just hit close. Okay, any questions to hear? Anybody have anything they don't understand? Am I going too fast, or is the speed okay for everybody? Doug?
Okay.
Howard, I had a question for you. It's Barbara.
Yeah,
Do you ever just use the auto, or do you always adjust the photo? Do you always play around with the sliders? Do you ever start with using the auto and then,
you can, and if you start in the library module, and we'll go back, let's see. Well, again, let's just take a different image. So in the Camera Raw, there's something called Quick Develop, and you'll notice that there's something called Auto. So if I click on Auto, it's going to give me a starting point. Some people like the starting point. You'll notice that it takes a minute to fully render, because I've zoomed in. So that this is out of camera. I've not done anything yet except hit auto, which is, again, kind of the same as shooting the JPEG. The difference being that I have all of the details still here, so I can still work on any of the treatments. So again, that's available both in the library module, and that there's two settings. There's a white balance. And again, these are things which are not available in JPEG that are available in RAW. As shot. Let's keep bigger here. Auto is going to make its guess on what it would like. And then sometimes you get very creative by changing these. It's got a daylight, a cloudy, a shade. When you start with lighting, you can get some very interesting things. And you notice that what it's doing here is it's changing the temperature and tint, is what these changes are physically doing. So if you watch these sliders, each time I change these, it's changing the temperature and tint. And
thank you.
I can still come in here and I can still make additional changes to taste. And you notice that this is blue and green here. and green and red, basically. And if I don't like any of this, if I messed up too much, again, one of the advantages of shooting raw is I can just go back and, or actually even camera raw, is that I can go back to where I was and I haven't ruined anything.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question, Doug? Go ahead.
I wanted to make a point. I don't disagree with you about JPEG and RAW. You know, the information, it helps a lot, especially with exposure and things like that. But I do want to point out that in Photoshop, you now have a camera raw filter, which allows you to do on a JPEG or anything you've got open in Photoshop, you can get almost every single setting you have here. Not everyone, but almost all of them. And you can just adjust the color.
These are not there. Well, again, you've
Yeah,
already, yes, you
is.
can use the camera raw filter. However, you've already thrown away pixels, and those
Right.
pixels are
Well,
not going to be back.
But if you're coming out from a phone that don't have a raw image, or you're coming from something that's old or whatever, you can get access to some more controls than maybe normally available.
Absolutely, yes. It does give you some control, but again, nowhere near as much.
No, there's still not pixels. I don't know what Topaz has a filter that'll actually say it'll convert it back to raw, but I
think if the pixels are gone, they're gone, and they're not going to magically get it back for you. Okay, so again, one of the things that I normally do when I'm working on an image is I'll pick up the vibrance a little bit, and I'll bring down the saturation just a touch. And I find that that's very handy. Very often, a lot of the images, especially raw images, it helps to bring the shadows up because it seems to, give you some nice brightness and some nice detail. So again, everything I'm doing so far is pretty much in this first module. Now it does have a, let's do this. It does have a spot removal tool. It's not real good. So this is one of the places. So if I wanted to take this, it's kind of a very poor job, and I can try a clone instead of a heal, and I can go back and I can undo. And let's try heal instead of clone. This is one of the places where I will go to Photoshop to do repairs. Actually, it's not great because it still overlaps them. So normally I do not use this unless it's something very simple. If it's a spot, sometimes you can get away with it. Red eye correction, I don't know that I've ever used. I don't do that much portrait photography, so I don't, and when I do, I don't use much flash, so I don't do a lot of red eye. And by the way, in critters, if you're using a flash, you get something called steel eye, which is kind of a gray eye, which could be equally frustrating. One of the nice new features that's come out fairly recently is masking. And so again, what I'm going to do is I can take this guy and crop him a bit. Vertical or horizontal. We'll do this, make it a size of it's nice. Got to give them some room to move into. So if I want to do some masking, I click on this little icon here that's called masking. I can select the subject, I can select the sky, I can just choose a brush or a couple of kinds of gradients. I can do a color range or a luminescence range or a depth range. So the one I use most often is select subject. So again, like we were doing in Sharpen AI, what I want is I just want the dog. I don't want to sharpen the rocks. I don't want to sharpen the water, or the droplets or anything. And again, this time it seemed to do a pretty good job. You'll notice that there's some bleed over up here. And again, we can make this bigger, so I'll zoom into 100%. And I'm holding down the shift key and makes a hand, so I can take and move this to be where I want to be. And what I want to do is I want to subtract from this image. And I'm going to use the brush because again, I've got all of these selections. So I'm going to use the brush to subtract. And I can adjust the size by using my left or right bracket keys. And I can just come in here and get rid of those things that I don't want. And again, hold the shift key down to get down here. And it looks like the rest of that is pretty decent. Maybe I want to do an add. And again, I'm going to use a brush. And I want to make sure that we got all his eye over here. Because sometimes if you're not careful, you can get something like a piece of an eye or something, or a piece of hair that you miss. And then when you go to sharpen, it looks really strange. So because I have done more than one thing, first of all, well, if I wanted to just work on the dog now, I could come back and I'm just going to scroll down. And you'll notice that I have all of these options, and it's green, which is a color that I picked, by the way. I can change that color to be whatever I want it to be. It's right here. So I can do different types of overlays, and I can change my color palette to just make sure it's a color that isn't in the image. And when I hit my actual sliders, you'll notice that the green goes away. And as I make my changes, you'll see that it's making changes just to the critter. And I have all of the changes that I normally have, my saturation, sharpness, and noise, and the fringe and all. And one of the things that wasn't in the original one, and thankfully they changed it now, is that if I want to select the inverse, which is everything but the dog, I now have the option to click up here and choose invert mask 1. And what it's going to do is select everything but the dog. And then when I make changes to that, it's just going to affect the background and not the dog itself. And again, I can change my size so that I can see how I'm affecting things. So if I wanted to darken that down a little bit, and maybe I want to do some overall highlights for the whole image. And whites are pretty good, blacks. We've got, by the way, if you'll notice that when these things change colors, in this case it's white, and what it's telling me is that there are some highlights or some shadows which are clipped, which are pure black. And I can just run my mouse over the top and it will show you where they are. And in this case, I don't care because it doesn't bother me at all that that's pure black, because I'm not concentrating on it, I'm concentrating on this guy. But if that were an issue, I could come and I could just adjust my blacks. And again, if I hold down the shift key and do it, it's just going to adjust it where I want to. And you'll notice it as I pull it over,
The Alt key.
it's going away. Okay, so again, the idea of what I'm doing here is not to try and give you completed professional pictures, but just to show you the processing and the power of this. I mean, I think that this program at this point is absolutely amazing. And I will say that I started Lightroom and I do probably 85 to 90% of what I need to do in Lightroom, and just go into Photoshop and the other programs if and as I need them. I did, this was I was taking some pictures for the Glenview Art League for, they had an art show and they wanted some pictures to use for their publicity. And the problem I had was that these folks were under tents, so that they were dark and the background was really bright. In order to get the detail that I wanted in the figure itself, I overexposed it. By the way, I'm just going to close this up. I overexposed it a bit. So what I can do now is I could play with some of these. I can take my exposure and bring it down a little bit. I can open up the shadows, which is going to bring him back. Usually in people, you don't want to do too much texture and clarity unless they're have really gentlemen with very interesting faces. Sometimes you can get away with putting some extra stuff in there. But this is a real good use for the masking, because I could just mask him and leave him alone and take the background and really darken the heck out of the background, so that your focus is here and not on the bright background there. And again, effects is vignetting, and the standard vignetting is to darken edges. Every once in a while for effects, you can come the other way and you can brighten edges and whiten them out. Sometimes I'll use those. I did a Civil War reenactment where I turned the images to sepia tone. And then I took the edges and lightened them to give them that old time picture look. So you can get kind of creative with that. So you can change the amounts. You can change where the midpoint is. You can affect the roundness and feathering and highlights. I personally never use grain. Tone curve is another one that there's all kinds of things that you can do. There's a couple of different kinds. There's a linear, a medium contrast, and a strong contrast. And sometimes, you just play with these. And basically what you usually want in here is you want an S curve. And one of the things that's interesting that I didn't talk about in the others, but I'm going to talk about here, is this little icon here that's like a circle with a couple of points on it. If I click on it and bring it into the image, you'll notice that I have this thing here. And what I can do is I can say, well, gee, what I want to do is I want to take, let's say, this over here, and I want to darken it down. Now you'll notice that it's darkening everything that has that color in it. So this probably isn't a great example. Look here, let's try something more sense. So this again is a raw image, so we'll come back and do some. So we want to go to the develop module. So input, effects. Effects, I want to start with basic. I'm going to pull up the highlights in this case. And, this was a really crazy flower. It's I'm not sure how I would enter this in competition because it's so busy that I'm not sure I could ever make it look to be, quote, a work of art, but it's a fascinating flower. So in the case of the tone curve, let's say what I wanted to do was I wanted to affect those greens. So I could come over here, and first of all, I could select the green by selecting the green icon, the green channel. But the other thing I could do is come in here and just pull that down. And you'll notice I can even make the background go away so that all I have is the flower or just little traces in the background. And so you can do some very interesting things with tone curves, depending on what your image is. Another thing that we didn't talk about, let's go back to, let's see. Let's take this guy here. This is a white balance selector, so that, again, we're going to start with that shot. And then I'm going to take my white balance selector and I'm going to try and pick something that's middle gray. And what it's going to do is adjust the image for me based on that being what's 40% gray to adjust the image to as a starting point. And then I can still come out and, you know, I don't want those highlights that bright or the whites, but I want to up the shadows a little bit. And I did spend some time playing with this, and I got some pretty nice detail on his back. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing it today. But just some other things that you can do. Some of the shortcut keys that are available. Detail sliders, usually sharpening you want to do at the very end. You know, there's input sharpening, output sharpening, but again, one of the things that I want to do with this image, you know, let's crop it some more so we get a won't worry about the shadow too much because what I want to show here, he's got a fish's plate with his mouth. This asterisk means that it's because we're not at 100%, it's not showing us, you know, as good as it can be. And normally the sharpening will start out like this. So the first thing I do is I put a little sharpening in here. And again, I'm hitting the shift key and I'm going to masking and I'm moving the mask icon something.
Well, that's weird. It's zooming in and out instead of moving the slider, right?
Yeah. See if I can like this here. What's supposed to happen is that as I press mask, let's just in case there's something going on with that image.
No, Howard, excuse me. I think if you put the option key and then mask, it'll give you the masking.
Yeah, you're right. It's Alt or Option. So what I'm doing is as I'm sliding the masking key over, you'll notice that what it's doing is it's selecting less and less to be sharpened. So I'm saying now that I want to sharpen primarily the outline of the flower and a little bit of the lily pads. So that now if I do my sharpening and my detail, you know, you can see the amount of sharpening or detail that's coming into the image. Okay, so here we're going to start again from basic. And the first thing I want to do is this guy's not quite square. So I can adjust that a couple ways. If I bring my cursor outside of the image, I can take it and you'll notice it becomes a grid and I can just angle it. And sometimes, depending on what it is, it'll straighten it all out. And then I just hit enter to make that take effect. If that doesn't work, there's a couple of different things we can look at. We can look at lens corrections. I'm sorry, that's going to be really lens profiles. What I want to look at is transform. And what transform will do is I can adjust verticals, horizontals, rotate, aspect ratio, scale. And there's an auto setting, which is going to give it its best guess as to what's straight. You'll notice when I let it do the auto, it's cropping some of the building that I might or might not want to do. There's guided, and you can just play with these and see which one of them gives you the one you like the best, vertical, or go back to off and choose full, and that's going to give me you know, a different aspect ratio based on, this was a wide angle lens. This was a 10 to 20 lens on a crop sensor. So what it's doing is it's adjusted for that. And I can tell it to constrain the crop if I'm happy with that. So it's going to make it a full crop. I can do a guided. And so what I'm going to do with the guided is I'm going to take a couple of things that I want to be straight. So let's say I want this to be straight. So I'm coming along the edge here. And I want this to be straight. And you'll notice it's what it's done is it's taken those and, you know, so it often corrects for some of that skewing in buildings that you get. Let's see.
Does that allow you to use more than one? It does. You can do more than one guided just by drawing on the screen.
Yeah, you can do as many as you wish.
I think you can do 4. I'm not sure if you can do more than that.
So I've got 1, 2, 3. There's
I haven't
4.
got them to pay attention.
Yeah, it's 4.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So I can do up to 4 at a time. Now, some of the very interesting things that you can do purely within Lightroom is I have a this was an HDR panel. So these were all part of the panel. So I'm selecting them all, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to photo merge, and I'm going to say HDR panel. Now, I think this is fascinating because this is all happening here. I've got to move my screen over before you can see it. This is all happening right within Lightroom without going to Photoshop, without going to any HDR or third-party software at all.
How many shots are involved in that?
I don't know, let's see, it's 3 times, it's about 24.
Wow.
And these were 20 megapixel files. Now, I guess give you a full disclosure, I am using an Intel Core i9, so it's a fairly fast processor. Now you'll notice that we've got 3 different types of projections: spherical, cylindrical, and perspective. So you can try each one, and depending on the image, see which one you like the best. And the other thing is I've got it checked to automatically create a stack. So it's what it's done is it's taken all of those images and rather than separate, it's created one stack. And perspective, we can try that. See which one we like. Now, yes, I can do these. Let's see which one. And then what I can do is I can fill the edges. So what it's going to do is do its best guess at filling in the empty spots. And you notice it did a pretty decent job. You know, this building looks like it belongs there. And then I can just say merge. Now I can also do a boundary warp, which gives us some, let's see, some kind. Can't see this.
Doug, you had a question?
Doug?
Yeah, I was just curious if it was about 5 minutes ago when we did that masking, when you did the option and then you're dragging, that was real cool. The question is, can you capture that mask? Because the mask is actually something I've been trying to do for a while, where you identify the outline of people, but not, you know, and just trying to grab the outlines.
I think you would have to do it in Photoshop. Lightroom doesn't do, you know, selections and cutouts.
Well, no, I'm just saying the actual mask effect that they're showing is like, oh, that's what I'm trying to get. But as soon as I let go of the button, then that goes away.
No, it's saved.
The mask is saved?
Yeah, the mask is there. You can go back to the mask. If that's what
Oh, is the mask on a different?
No, you just click on that button again and that panel opens up and shows you all the masks that you've added.
Oh, okay, I'll have to try that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's Linda or John Woolley had a question. And turn on your mic.
Okay, our question is, will we be able to get a copy of this video?
Yes, we were recording it, and Carlos, it'll be up on the website.
It'll actually be up on our YouTube, our Garden Photographic Society YouTube channel. On our homepage, there's a link to that. There's several links actually to the YouTube. Or if you just go to YouTube and search Garden Photographic Society, you'll find it as well. But you can go to gardenphoto.org and I have a couple links there to it.
Thank you.
But give me like 48 hours.
Okay. So some of the interesting things are, I was taking this with a wide angle lens looking up, and you can get some very interesting attempts on, what do I do? Do I want to leave it like that? Because obviously we're tilting back, we're skewing, we're doing all kinds of strange and wonderful things here. So what we can do is we can play with these individual sliders, and you'll notice that as I go vertical, I'm going to lose the top. So one of the things I can do is scale the image, which brings it back kind of, and then I can keep on skewing some more. And then, if what my goal is to just have it, part of it, I can come in here and I can either do something like this, if this is what I want my end image to be, or I could bring it back into Photoshop and do some content-aware fill to fill in part of the, and notice I missed a little bit, so I could either do a content-aware fill or come back to my cropping just to touch more cropping. So you can do a lot of, very interesting things here within Lightroom. This was an image that I took. I was across the street from this here, across the that's Middle Lakeshore Drive, and that's the view down the river. And I thought I might try and get creative, and so what I want to do is I want to take this guy, I want to crop him. So I'm going to use a freeform crop here. I'm going to come and run into here, run into here, because I can maybe try and do some sort of a frame within a frame. From here, I can go back to my basic panel, do whatever adjustments I want. So you can do some very interesting things within the program. Okay, anybody else have any questions right now? Okay, I will show you a couple of other programs here. Let's see, let's come back to this. And again, I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to edit in. And this is one of my very favorite plugins. It's not cheap, but it's called Topaz Studio 2. And what it allows you to do is get extremely creative. Bear with me. I thought I had it on my site. So this is Studio 2, and it has looks and filters, and they have categories, scads, and you can select, you can collect favorites and recently used, or my looks, you can create your own. But just to show you some of the things that you can do really crazy, is you can get, and the other thing you can do is you can adjust the level of the effect. And you'll notice that as I'm looking at these, without even clicking on them, I can see what the effect is going to do. Some really neat looks. Somebody's getting really crazy. And then in addition to that, you can add filters afterwards. So after you do that, you come along and you can come in here. What I'd have to do is add the look and save it. And then after I save it, I go back to filters. And or I have all of these different filters within here that I can play with. So I can do AI clear as a, detail and sharpness and exposure and clarity. There's basic adjustments, so this is kind of like a Lightroom Photoshop. Plus more. And then they have all kinds of fancy things you can do. I can do frames. Sure you choose, sizes, shapes, all kinds of stuff. So there's all kinds of different things that I can do. And basically what these looks are doing is using combinations of these. And I'm going to come back here and just look at some more of these different filters here. So you can see you can get all kinds of creative. So this is kind of a fun program to work with. And literally hundreds of different types of looks you can get.
So it's like Luminar, but better.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's many more presets in here. I mean, you can do, outline pencil drawings. There's a bunch of artistic ones.
I think it's just a lot weirder. You can do a lot weirder stuff than on Luminar.
Right.
Creative.
How much?
I think it's a $100 retail. If you can get if somebody's got a 10 or 20% off on it. So you
They
can
have
do,
sales.
there's some charcoal sketchbooks, and here's some colored pencils. And, Da Vinci and Degas and Edward Hooper.
I think they usually have Black Friday things, Black Friday sales, and you can catch up and buy stuff you don't have and not have to pay for it.
Monet oil painting thing.
Nice.
Still working there. Then go. So a lot of different things you can do with that. Still drying as soon as it gets done, I'll close it down. So there's my Monet oil painting. And I'm going to cancel it. I'm about to save it. Close it, save it. Digital image. Another very handy plugin is we're going to edit in, and we are going to go to Silver FX Pro, which is my favorite. Change it to monochrome, and you can edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. You can edit a copy, or you can edit the original. So these have all kinds of different settings that you can do. And what I like about this is I can get a look that I like. And then once I get the look, I can still come and do whatever adjustments I want. So what happens is, so that's the look I'm going to start with. And you'll notice these are the adjustments it's made. So if I don't want the whites quite so bright, we can come down here and darken them a bit, bring up the shadows a bit, highlights. We can, you'll notice that it has a border, and it's chosen a border, so I can come and I can actually turn the borders off or change them. Another thing that I can do is I can put control points in. So if I just want to adjust this area here, notice I can kind of change it around, and once I get what I want, I can make some changes to it within my control point. So it's just going to affect that part of the image. Another thing that I can do with it is I can change color toning. So if I want to do, we keep on updating these, and each time they update them, they move things around just a little bit. So, you know, we can affect structure, we can affect contrast, brightness and highlights, and so forth. And I can also do selective colorization if I want. So a particular thing, so we're getting a little pink back in there. There's filters, so I can use, you know, these would be like putting filters on your camera, different color filters. Got to, but I can physically change the colors of these, so I can use sienna or dual tone. There's all kinds of different things I can do with it. I'm not sure why it's not showing. Cancel this and try one more time.
It's right there, Silver Effects Pro, just go up. There you go.
So we'll edit the original because this is already a copy. Yeah, Michael, while we're waiting. You're muted, so I'm mute.
I'm sorry, I have a question for you. If I were to acquire any of these Topaz programs or Silver FX Pro or whatever, and upload them to my computer, does Lightroom just find them, or is there some way that you have to put them into Lightroom? And the second question,
when you install them, it gives you an option to do the plugins for, if it'll find Lightroom and Photoshop if they're on your computer, it'll give you the option to add these to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it will put those, because these can be run standalone also. But
okay.
if you buy them, and by the way, the Topaz set is for the Silver FX Pro is part of a suite. You know, there's several different programs. There's
Yeah, the Nick collection.
Nick collection that comes together.
Yeah, NIK. It's from DxO. DxO sells it now.
All right, so here's selenium, there's blue, there's cyanotype, there's coffee, copper. What I use most often is one of the sepia tones. And you can change them. And also if you double click on them, you can get settings where you can infinitely change these. So you can look at each one of these and see which one you like. And then if you find one you like, so we're going to use that sepia tone. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to brighten it a bit. So now I'm running all in sepia tones. So again, I'm going to cancel this, but this is all.
And Howard, the selective color thing, it's just you add a control point and then you go and add the color back kind of thing. Is that it? In Silver FX Pro, right?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't done that in a while.
Now, one of the newer ones that's come out, it's changing almost weekly, is Luminar Neo, because they've gone through 3 or 4 generations. And to my mind, the jury is still out on it. But
Good. I'm glad I didn't buy it.
I'm saying the Neo, to my mind, the jury is still out on it. But this is Neo, and it decided that this was probably a nature image. So it gave me the nature collection choices. And again, it has presets. And you can, just go through them and see if you like them or not. And you can also, it's got a full editing suite. So you can crop, enhance, it's got, AI sky adjustment. Several of these are AI now, so it's like a structure AI. So you can do an amount, and then you can do a boost. So you notice I can get some, some real crazy effects. And then they have relight so that you can change the lighting. So I can change the brightness near, far, and how deep it goes. There's atmosphere, sun rays, dramatic. There's all kinds of different settings in here. And it's, again, it's about $100 plug-in, and there's deals. So that's another one. And the last one that I use often is I do a fair amount of HDR work. So again, we'll just pick 3 of our HDR images for the sake of time. And we'll say, now here, instead of edit in, we have to go to export. And we're going to export to HDR FX Pro. Aurora HDR has been supplanted by a Neo HDR. And again, we'll tell it we're going to add a copy with Lightroom adjustments, even though I haven't done any Lightroom adjustments to it yet. So what it's doing is it's looked at the 3 images and it says this is -1 3/4, this is 0, and this is 2. And it's letting me choose the reference image. And one of the advantages of choosing a reference image is that, like I took a picture of a gentleman walking across a storefront, and I took it in HDR, and I wanted him right in the doorway. So I think I took 5 shots. So I took the second shot or 4th shot, whatever it was that had him in a position that I wanted him to. And what it does is it auto aligns the images based on whichever shot you choose as a reference shot. We're setting it for auto alignment. We can have ghost reduction. So if we're hand holding, it does a marvelous job of lining things up so that you don't see the camera shake, and chromatic aberration. And then you create the HDR, and it gives you, this is, again, it's sticky. So I think it gives you the last used image. And then after that, it's got all kinds of presets. So it's got like 46 different presets. So again, what I'll do is I'll start out with one that I like. You can go crazy with them, or you can go very lifelike with them. So default is, very plain. And one of the best uses for HDR is that the human eye sees like 12 to 16 stops of light. The camera sees like 6 to 8. So if you've got a scene that has brights, midtones, and darks, if you just try to average out, you're either going to get black darks and or blown out whites. So by doing HDR, by shooting underexposed, proper exposed, and overexposed, you get the best of all worlds. And so you can take that. By the way, you can do HDR on one image, and you can use some of these effects, and it will adjust the image. So again, this is a starting point. And then from here, it's got all kinds of sliders. So you can season to taste. I can go from subtle, I can go to strong. And you'll notice that what it's doing is this one says it's affecting depth. I can be realistic, I can be accentuated, I can be detailed, I can be grungy. So I can pick what I want, I can pick the drama, and you notice that each one of them is affecting different things. And then I can come in here into individual, exposures, shadows, lights and darks, and so forth. And I can also do selective adjustments. So I can add control points and only do the control, only change those things that are in the control points. I can do tonalities and shifts and rotations. And so I can make whatever changes, and then when I'm done, I can save this and go back into Lightroom or Photoshop and continue to edit from there. Okay. Any other questions?
Anybody?
Like to know about, or? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, just coming back to acquiring these programs. I have 2 different computers in different homes that I use, and the Adobe subscription lets me buy it once and use it on either computer. So with, let's say, Topaz, do I have to buy it twice, once for each computer, or can I get it once and use it on more than one computer?
You can use it on more than one computer. I have it on. I have 2 desktops at my house, because I have one that I use for editing and one that I use primarily for printing. And then I have a notebook that I travel on. So I basically have 3 different computers. And I have most of these programs on all 3. Some of them limit them to 2. And I do have that issue with Photoshop, because I've got 3 computers. So what I have to do is, if I'm moving from one that I'm using, for example, the only time I use my notebook generally is if I'm going out to make a presentation or if I'm traveling. So I leave it off of the notebook, and when I log onto the notebook, I have to just log it off of one of the others. So yeah, you can use most of these on at least 2 computers.
And these are a one-time purchase, or it's an ongoing subscription?
Kind of a hybrid. It used to be in days past that some of these, once you bought it, you had a lifetime subscription. But they've all done away with that model, and they have an annual subscription fee. And unlike Photoshop and Lightroom, the program does not go away. If you don't renew it, you just don't get the updates. So some of these programs, like the Nick Suite, they update every year or 2. And I find that most of the updates that they're making, for my purposes, are not worth the change. So I will use a version for several years until I find that the program has some changes that are significant enough that I want to update it. And at that point, I can use a discount. I can get a discounted price because I already own an older version, and I can update to the newer version. And very often at holiday time and Black Friday and some of these, they come up with extra specials where you can either complete a suite or update a group of them for a special price.
Howard, why don't you stop sharing your screen so everybody can see everybody else?
Close this. I do have it set for automatic backup, and I do back up every like 3 to 4 times that I use it. Okay.
Oh, I do every time it quits, so I don't forget.
And by the way, one of the things which I find extremely important is I have my catalog is on my hard drive. My images are on external drives, which I back up to an in-the-house RAID group, which is like downstairs in my basement. And I also do a second backup online. And I can't tell you how many times people have come to me crying that their computer has crashed or they got a new computer, things didn't work right, and they've lost all their images. And I think that the backups are extremely important.
Totally. One of the backups that I do, I learned that because I'm a Citibank user, they give you a safety box,
Deposit box.
the safe deposit box, and for free, because you're
Right. But you have to have 2 or more backups, and you have to remember to update them and change them out. You have to
Right.
physically do that.
that
And the
backup.
problem that I find is a lot of people don't.
Right. You
So I
gotta
use a
remember to do that.
program for internal backup called, oops, let me find it here, called Good Sync. And it's not expensive. I want to say it's like a $49 program. And it does a constant analyzing the drive and just does, the first time it will do a full backup, and after that it just says changes. Because I've got about 7 terabytes of pictures. So I don't think I would want to very often do full backups.
Right. Yeah, I think Chronos Sync for the Mac has been around for a while.
Yeah.
Also, a carbon copy cloner
Yeah.
is one that the most of us Mac users use to like back up, your data from one location to the other.
And then I use a program, an online program called Backblaze, which again is not expensive. And I find it's a wonderful program. And again, everything I use is unattended because I'm a computer tech by trade, and I can't tell you how many times I've had clients, I'll sell them a tape drive, I'll sell them the 2 drives to change out or whatever, I'll sell them flash drives, whatever they need. And, my computer crashed. Well, you got a backup. No, but I should have. So I try to use completely unattended automatic backups. And
What were the name of those? What were the name of the
Backblaze
backups
is
you use?
online, BACKBLAZE. And I have, again, 7 terabytes. I initially did a backup when I had like 3 or 4 terabytes, and I think it took a month to get everything out there. And at the time, I think I had Comcast, and they were complaining, about all the bandwidth I was using.
That's the problem with online backups.
So the other thing is that you can, one of the things that Backblaze has, which is wonderful both for backups and for restores, is they will send you for free overnight an external drive. You can back up your images to it and send it back to them. Now, I did this once. I had a crash and I did a restore this way, and they sent me the drive. They charged me $139 for the drive. And then they say if you return it within, I think it's 7 or 14 days, they give you the $139 credit. So I got their drive, I restored it to my drives, and then sent it back to them. And I think that's worth its weight in gold. And because I'm just doing changes now, what I will try to do is I will try, again, if I'm out and I went to Texas and I'm shooting it, 10 frames a second or 20 frames a second when I'm shooting birds in flight, and in a day I might have, 2 or 3 or 4,000 images. I don't want to back up all of those, so I will go through and cull them first. And what I do, by the way, when I travel with my notebook, and I travel with 2 external hard drives. So I will, after a day's shoot, I will put all of my data on the computer hard drive, and then I'll back up twice, once to each of the external drives. The external drives, one always travels with me and one always travels in my suitcase. And that way, even if I lose a suitcase or somebody steals my bag, I still have all of my images backed up and protected in another spot. Very important.
Yep.
Because drives have gotten so cheap.
I have a question, which actually Don DiDonato, who is going to watch this on the recording, we were talking about it, and it's the eternal photographer's question. At what point in your workflow do you do your denoising?
Early.
I assume sharpening is going to happen somewhere in
In the
the
middle.
beginning. But if denoising, do you do it in the beginning before you do anything?
First, because you don't want to fix a noisy image, because you're just increasing the noise levels.
Right, and then so then when
Very
you bring,
first thing you do, maybe a crop first,
right,
and then a
Right.
denoise.
right. Yeah, your standalone versions of like Topaz denoise, what I do when I have 200 images, I just use the standalone version and denoise them before even bringing them into Lightroom. And then in Lightroom, I have a special preset that does not add any noise reduction, right? The noise reduction, all of the color noise reduction, it's all on 0, right? Because you've already done that. You don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes, depending on how good your shot is, you might not want to do noise reduction. Or sometimes, depending on what it is, you don't mind a little noise, you'd like a little noise.
right.
I don't denoise everything. In fact, I probably don't denoise more than 10 or 20% of my images.
Right. Yeah. The stuff that I'm talking about is all shot in, sports shot indoors at 12,800 DP.
Then you've got to denoise for sure.
Yeah. And you gotta, or 8,000 or 10, depends. I shift around during the shoot, but all of those shots, you go 100% and it's like a snowstorm, in there. So.
Yep. Okay, any other questions? Concerns? Anything anybody'd like to know about that I haven't covered?
No, everybody's
Not
good.
know what we don't know.
All right. Well, Howard, thank you so much, man. I learned some things that I wrote down.
Oh, I do have one more that I totally forgot, and I think it's very important. So I'm actually going to start up Lightroom again one more time, and I'm going to share my screen just very quick. It's just going to take a minute here, hopefully.
Oh, and while you're doing that, I made a mistake. Our garden photo walk is actually September 20th, not September 15th, not October 15th.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, next week, September 15th, not October 15th. You were right. Thanks to Barbara who set me right.
Share my screen again. Find out where I put it. Share my Lightroom screen. Yeah, this is something that I just learned that I really hadn't thought about at all. One of the things I totally skipped when we were talking, come on, change pictures, was something called color grading. And I don't really fully understand color grading, nor do I use it very much. But I will tell you that if you go to midtones and that there is a luminance slider that comes up. And if you take the midtones and look what it does. So it's just affecting midtones. And that's different than anything that's happening in any of your basic panels. And I thought that was kind of neat.